with that, I'm going to turn over screen sharing duties over to our speaker, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So, much of the rehabilitation after a brain injury can be focused a lot on like physical health and things like that, but there are really other ways to engage in different rehabilitation efforts. And so, we're going to talk a little bit with Michelle to learn about those. And she is the development associate at Music Speaks. She graduated from the University of Missouri, Kansas City in Kansas City, Missouri, with her Bachelor in Arts of Arts in Music, music therapy emphasis, and completed her music therapy internship at Lee and Britton Infant Development Center in Merriam, Kansas. After becoming a board certified music therapist, Michelle has worked for many years providing direct music therapy services and completed training in neurologic music therapy. Michelle has experienced providing music therapy to children and adolescents with various disabilities, older adults with, related to wellness and memory care, and adolescents and adults in a mental health setting. So we're really looking forward to learning a little bit more about music therapy, the brain, and what it can do for individuals living after a brain injury. So take it away, Michelle.
let's see. If this is my beat, I'm going to fit some music into this. So I fit 8 notes into those beats. That is the rhythm, is just breaking down the beat into smaller groups or longer groups. It can even be long. So how you break up the beat is rhythm, different durations of each note, long durations, short durations, etc. So that's rhythm. The meter is how the beats are grouped together. They can be grouped together in threes, which is triple. So that would be like a waltz. It would be like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They can be grouped together in duple or twos, which would be like a 1, 2, 1, 2 kind of feel. So I'm going to play a couple of songs just so that we can look into these concepts a little bit. And I want you to see if you can guess, and you can share in the chat what meter it is that I'm playing. Let me see. I'll start with this one. I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend I happened to see. We have some responses, I think. So that is an example of, yeah, there we go, triple. Good job, triple. So then my next example is going to be a different song, and I bet you'll know what it's gonna be. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. Triple or duple? For the time of mine. Yeah, cool. You guys got it. So it's just dividing those rhythms into shorter amounts of time. Cool. The tempo, how fast or slow the music is, known as beats per minute. So you can have 60 beats per minute, which is the same pace as seconds passing in a minute. Or you can have 120 beats per minute, which is twice as fast as seconds. And that's how you measure the tempo, but the tempo just means how fast or slow the music is. The melody will be the tune. So most often we recognize songs based upon the melody, the part that gets stuck in your head. You probably can recognize that song based on just the melody that I played. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, ABCs, they're the same tune. Great. So, yeah. Perfect. So then the next word is pronounced timbre, and that is the quality of the sound. So you could have two instruments playing the same note or the same pitch, but they sound different. It's the same pitch still, but the quality of sound is different. So I have this keyboard here, and I'm going to change to a couple of different sounds, but I'm going to play just a scale as it sounds like a piano. So that's just a C scale. And then if I change the timbre, it was the same C scale, but it sounded like an organ. So same exact notes, but the quality of sound is different. It might the organ is brighter, kind of tinny sounding to me, but those distinctions are how we can identify different instruments. The dynamics are just how loud or soft the music is. Pretty self-explanatory. And then harmony is the complexity of combined pitches or melody. So if you picture somebody singing a solo, it's just one voice singing one pitch at a time. And then think of you have a choir singing maybe 6-part harmonies. You can hear some people are singing lower, some people are singing higher. There's always some sort of melody still in it. But that's the harmony, is expanding it vertically, if you think of it that way, because you're singing different pitches at the same time, and they complement each other normally. So it just adds complexity to something. Here's another example of harmony. First, if anybody is familiar with Les Miserables, this is Castle on a Cloud from Les Miserables. But I'm going to play the melody by itself, and then I'll add the harmonies in, and you'll be able to tell the difference in complexity. So that was just the melody by itself. Here's with some harmonies. So you could still hear the melody. The harmony, it just vertically adds to what you have in the melody. The pitch is just if the notes are high or low, varying pitches on a scale of high to low. And then the form, musical form is, if you think of like your favorite pop song, they'll have a verse, a chorus, a verse, sometimes a bridge, the chorus, and then an outro kind of thing. So the form there would be verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, and etc. So it's just repeating similar musical ideas throughout one piece of music is the form. And then lyrics are just the words, if any, in the music. All right. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense to you. But so then, if you think of all of these things make up one piece of music, all of those elements, and there are still more that I didn't include, but there are some elements that organize time in music, and those elements would be the pulse or the beat, the tempo, the rhythm, and the meter. So organized across time, which for music therapists, that gives you a really good way to track time in a session. So how long did somebody participate in this behavior, or how long did somebody hold that musical phrase and support their breath? How long was that breath that they just took? And it's all organized in the music naturally. So not only is it organized in the music, but when we process it, it is also processed across time. So there are different parts of your brain that are engaged just for that component of music as well. And then pitch is organized in the music too. So pitch is organized in melody, harmony, form, timbre, and dynamics. And the pitch and that how that's organized is processed in even different places. It's really fascinating. Okay. So I would love to hear from you all what just answers to some of these questions. First, if you could, two-part question answer here. What kind of music do you like to listen to help calm you down? Like what genre of music is it? And or what does it sound like? If you want to respond in the chat to just that first question of what music calms you down and what does it sound like, I would love to hear some of these responses. Classical. Yeah. Folk music, soft guitar, single voice. Yeah, coffee house. One of my favorites too. Classical, gospel. Yeah. Slow waltzes. So yeah, really cool, really cool. Jazz, nice, complex. Cool. That's awesome, you guys. R&B, nice. Yeah. So some of these elements in these genres, a lot of instrumental music. So that's a cool trend. But if you think of relaxing music in general, it's a lot of people have similar interests there. A lot of people look to similar kinds of music to help calm and slow down and kind of get into that headspace. So then my next question is, what kind of music kind of pumps you up and makes you feel excited? What might that sound like? If you can think of some of these elements of music into it too. Funk, awesome. Yeah, I know jazz and rock. For me, some rock music would be something upbeat, Irish, awesome. Yeah, faster, louder, salsa. So maybe a little more syncopations in the rhythm, not as strict to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, things like that. Oh, Stephanie, that's a really good point. That's a big that's a big thing in the music therapy world too. So yeah, a lot of these elements of music are similar for those calming and these upbeat. So music that makes you want to move around. For me, a lot of times, for me, a lot of times the music that makes me want to move around would be like the rock or faster rhythms and tempos and things like that. And then my last question, feel free to do this in the answer in the chat, and then I'll play a few things. But my last question is, how does it feel when the music doesn't resolve? So if you, or even longer over time, if you're listening to a song and you're really into it, but then the radio turns off and you don't get to hear the ending or something like that. But I'll play an example and then maybe we'll have some thoughts about how it feels. But if the music doesn't resolve, I want to know what that makes you all feel like. So if I did in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, disappointed, but I'm thinking in my mind, I need to finish it. It's unsettling. Continue to sing along, me too. Yeah, so it's fascinating too, because that was just a melody and it was very simple, but we still, because that's something that we know, that song, we want it to finish. So it's just really interesting how music can bring out these feelings within us in even a simple form. Cool. Yeah, I usually finish it in my head or sing it out loud. It drives me nuts. Okay, so just some neuroscience fundamentals, which you all are probably familiar with. You have 4 lobes: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, here, and then your occipital lobe, cerebellum, and brainstem. So each part of your brain is responsible for something different, right? There's a lot of different things. Your brain is responsible for so much, but different areas are responsible for different things. Your frontal lobe, generally speaking, will have higher level functions like multiple step sequences, problem solving, behavior, mood, those sorts of things. Your temporal lobe's responsible for attention, memory, understanding language, emotions. Parietal lobe is just how you perceive your environment and integrating that information from your senses to help you perceive your environment. Your occipital lobe is vision, color orientation, things like that. And then your cerebellum, coordination of motor movements, balance. Brainstem is those automatic functions. So how does this relate to music? Because it's processed all over, it's engaging multiple of these areas simultaneously. And anytime your brain is engaged in music, there are multiple areas of the brain that are active. And we know that when we are engaged and we have our brain active, we are strengthening connections in our brain. So I want to show you this. If anybody has seen it before, it's called the Tango Brain, based on a research study. But this video, it's 9 minutes long, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. I'll fast forward to different parts and you'll hear changes in the music and get to see visually what's happening in the brain. But passive listening and active engagement in music are processed differently. There are some areas that are the same, but there are also things that are different. This video shows listening, what music listening might look like in your brain. And it's an Argentinian tango. It's really fun. So we'll watch a little bit of this and then and if you have any comments during the video, feel free. Red is high activation, blue is low activation. So right now, just piano, one instrument, oftentimes a single line music, not a lot of harmonies. So, I think that's really intense. Okay, let me fast forward. We'll add in some more instruments. And it's all over. Okay, last part. Very fast. So I find it really interesting that in this piece, in this tango, the part that had the most steady, predictable rhythm was here at the end. And I mean, lit up with having that predictable rhythm and predictable pulse and beat. And something that I'll talk more about too is how important, when we're thinking of brain rehabilitation, how important the rhythm is to everything that you have going on. And so I think this end part is just really fascinating. It reflects that really well. Okay. So when you're actively engaging in music, your whole brain is active when you're listening, but when you engage in music is when you see more of those changes. So engaging in music is repetitive. If you have ever tried to learn an instrument or learn a song, you have to practice and practice and practice in order to learn it. Or if you're just improvising, which in a music therapy session, most of the time, if not always, it will be an improvisational music experience. So perhaps in a group setting, the music therapist will pass out instruments and everyone is keeping time together or just engaging in this musical experience. So even just playing in a song, you're doing a very repetitive motion if you're playing a drum, or if you're shaking a shaker or hitting a tambourine. Like, these motions are really repetitive. So the more you engage in those repetitive things, the stronger those pathways in your brain can become. So playing or singing in a repetitive pattern, you're strengthening and building those connections in your brain, which is why engaging in music with a music therapist will bring the most change, rather than like passively listening to preferred music or something like that. Still really wonderful. It's just different. Engaging in music brings out these different changes, these different results. Again, going back to neuroplasticity, you can't strengthen and build a new neural pathway by doing something one time. You have to do it over and over again to strengthen and build those connections. I like chords. The complexity of the harmonies, perhaps, in the chat, Chris. Cool. Yeah, so Stephanie's question, this is a good question. And this is something at Music Speaks that we're trying to do more of. We want to, it's so important to advocate for music therapy and advocate for this service provided. And really, the best way to do that is to talk to people about it, and educate them about all of these things that music can do. Yeah. Oh, Glenda, that is really, really great. This is a perfect example. It ties in exactly with what you said, Glenda. So it'll go over a little bit of that too. But I don't know if you all are familiar with Gabby Giffords. This happened quite a few years ago. She had a traumatic brain injury to the left side of her brain. And so this is a glimpse into some of her recovery. If you've seen it already, it's just really fascinating to rewatch. But if you haven't seen it, I hope that it is really kind of blows your mind, because it blows my mind. But so this is an example of music's effect on speech and language rehabilitation, which ties into with what you were saying about yourself.
Now, in those early therapy sessions in Houston,
you turn on the light.
it seemed as though words had abandoned her.
Let's try this one. Watch me. Yes. Turn on the.
For those of us injured on the left side of the brain, our loss of words can make us feel trapped inside our own minds.
Gabby, are you frustrated? Can I tell you something? It is going to get better. okay? It's frustrating right now, but it is going to get better. You've come a long way in 5 weeks. You've come a long way.
And then, in this emotionally charged moment, to our absolute amazement, we heard this.
Okay, you're gonna do this. You ready? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Remember, at this point, she couldn't say the word light. Suddenly, there she was, singing that word and a whole lot more.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Excellent.
Well, good morning. Gabby, how do you do?
Megan Morrow is Gabby's music therapist.
Why is it that someone who can't speak can sing?
Because music is accessed in many different areas of the brain that aren't designated for language. We're retrieving pitch, melody, rhythm through all these different areas, and those are working to get your language back.
Remember, we told you that language is normally held in the left hemisphere of the brain. Music exists in both hemispheres. Incredibly, scientists are finding that music therapy has the potential to rebuild language on the uninjured right side.
Nothing activates the brain so extensively as music. And it's really only been in the last 5 years that brain imagery which showed it had been possible to create a new language area in the right hemisphere. And that blew my mind. One would have said that's a fantasy.
It reminds me of being stuck in traffic on the freeway. You aren't able to go forward on that pathway anymore, but you can exit and go around and get to where you need to go.
In therapy, phrases are combined with music.
I am fine. I am fine.
Then gradually, the music fades away, and the words can stand on their own.
So what are you going to tell him? Yes. Give me a kiss. Right now. Kiss.
There we go. So, really, really cool how music can make those changes in your brain, and really fascinating that your brain is flexible in that way. Yeah. So, I'm gonna get into some motor examples too. So I have a video example, but first I want you to think about different motor movements, and kind of most motor movements that we have some sort of rhythm and some sort of pattern to them. So Shelly, your question, sorry, really quick. Is this unusual, or do you see these kinds of results often? So Gabby Gifford's case was definitely not a one-time case, and there are lots and lots and lots of research that goes into backing up why this works, and the techniques and the way to use the music in order to achieve these results. So I have a list of references at the end, but I'll show you this book right here. It's Neurologic Music Therapy. And this handbook has all of the research and techniques for a lot of the things I'm talking about. They've been around for many, many years, and they are constantly doing research to learn a lot of really cool things about music and the brain. Awesome. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So the motor interventions, if we're thinking of maybe we're thinking of you're sitting in your chair and you want to lift your legs up one at a time, like you're marching while you're sitting down. So thinking back to meter, that would be a duple meter, because you have two steps, a duple meter. So if we are thinking of using the music to cue some of that, maybe perhaps you have some weakness in your legs. So just raising your knee up is harder, more work than putting it down. So we might use the music to cue some of those things. And it might sound like this: right, left, right, left. So we're going up and down, or sorry, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down with your legs. So this technique is called pattern sensory enhancement, and it's using the music to cue what the movement will look like, should look like. So maybe we're doing some arms up and then down, arms up and then down. So in that motion, there's more work going into raising your arms up most of the time, depends on who you're working with, than it is bringing them down. So I might, if we're going up and back down, up and back down. So in this case, I was taking up a lot of space on the piano, a lot of range and pitch from starting low, going up high and back down. And I included an increase in dynamics. So I did a crescendo, or I got louder the more you work to move up with your arms, and then I decreased the sound moving down. It was less work. So I used the music to emphasize those hard work, the hard work within that movement. And all of these examples that I'm playing, something that music therapists are trained to do is to think of how to modify and adapt music, right? So these are basic examples of movements, but the point of them is you assess without the music what the movement looks like, how much time it takes the individual to do this movement. Then you add music to it. Maybe you need to increase slowly the tempo so that it's moving in a quicker space by the end of this intervention time. One more example, using harmonies, a complexity to help emphasize emotion, is if you think or have some, like maybe hand weakness, depends, I mean, maybe just one hand has some weakness, and you have a stress ball or something, squeezing the stress ball is going to be hard for someone that has weakness in their hand. Releasing that squeeze, releasing that would be an easier, less work to do. So if I want to use the music to show an example of this, we might squeeze and release, squeeze and release. So you'll notice the harmonies were there's kind of some tension here. There was some tension there to show the tension in your muscles. And then when you release, it resolved, and it was very nice. So you can use the music to cue motor movements in that way. And again, that is something that you would do not just once, right? It's not how it works. You would have to do that multiple times. So then, here's an example of a gait training technique. Yeah, you'll see.
Hello, I'm Barney.
He was in a bicycling accident resulting in a traumatic brain injury. He struggles with walking, exhibits a shuffled gait. There's his baseline. no music. So, engaging his auditory motor system, he trains with a neurologic music
Okay, whenever
therapist.
you're ready.
The click is a metronome. That's the rhythmic cueing. Because the impact rhythm has on the auditory and motor systems, it helps Barney move more efficiently, even after the rhythm is taken away. So, like I said at the beginning, there's music therapy isn't doing its job if there is no carryover without the music. So here's
Normally do.
before and after. So that was just in one session. Okay. Wait a second. There we go. So then we have some speech and language goal areas that we can target. I've talked about those a bit, but I'll get into them a little bit more too. Okay, so melodic intonation therapy is one that I talked about at the beginning. The melodic intonation therapy is, there's been lots and lots of research on this technique specifically. And it has shown that there is a change in your brain on an anatomical level from receiving melodic intonation therapy. So the way that this works, we'll try it together. It's different because we're virtual, but say we're working on saying, how are you? We're working with somebody who can't get those words out. So how are you is the phrase that we're working towards. And if you think of it, the inflection in my voice, it starts here, it goes up and comes back down. So how are you? How are you? So I'm going to put some pitches to it to make the phrase intoned. And another thing, like I said, with rhythm being a key to a lot of these techniques, you would start by, rewind a second. So if we have a speech and language injury, that would typically be in the left hemisphere of the brain. So, the left hemisphere. So we're going to tap with your left hand to engage the right hemisphere of the brain. Because remember, we're working to reroute this job in the brain. The left hemisphere is damaged, so we're rerouting it to the right side. So we're going to tap the whole time and we'll sing, how are you? How are you? How are you? And you can, if you're at home, you can join in with me. How are you? How are you? And then I would eventually fade away. How are, and then you would be singing it by yourself. And then I'm going to remove myself altogether, and it would be on the client or individual's terms to, if they need to get tapping in order to sing this phrase, that's totally fine. If they can just sing it, great. But the goal is that we're shaping this spoken phrase using the music so that by the end of this intervention, somebody will be able to say, how are you? And maybe they have to sing it for a little bit first, but that is eventually, that would be the goal. And that's melodic intonation therapy. Very quick, short version. Another way to work on this speech and language goal areas is something called musical speech stimulation. And going back to when I played a song and didn't resolve, a lot of you said you needed to sing it, fill it in, or whatever. So that's basically this technique is we'll do a little bit, but I want you to listen to when it's your turn to fill in. If I can think of how this goes. My there we go. My body lies over thee. My body lies over there. My body lies over thee. Oh, bring back my body too. So I left the end of the phrase once I got into it. I left the end of the phrase off. And hopefully you felt like you needed to fill it in. That is the simplest version of music speech stimulation. So then you can scaffold on top of that and perhaps leave out multiple words. So now we're building up how many words somebody is saying back to back. Or, so musical speech stimulation. That's a little bit about that. Therapeutic singing. So it's the use of singing exercises to work on different goals. So perhaps some targeted areas we're thinking of is somebody has decreased respiratory support and coordination of breath, a decreased rate of speech, or they're having difficulties with coordinating their speech production. I need to get out some music and we'll do this together. But if you would sing with me, you can stay muted. And then first, we'll try to extend the duration of one of the words. And you can sing along and you'll get the hint. Whenever I want you to hold it, I'll tell you. I want you, when we get there, we'll hold the word roads. It's country roads take me home. So we'll hold the word roads. We'll hold the word home. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old here, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing in the breeze. Country road, take me home to a place where I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country road. So even I was struggling with extending those words. But you can tell naturally in the music how we can extend those specific words and work on, take a really big breath before you sing that word so we can hold it out. And that would be an example of therapeutic singing. Another example is maybe somebody is currently able to say 1 to 2 syllables or 1 to 2 words in each breath. Eventually extending that to maybe the goal is for them to say 5 or 6 words in one breath. a little example of how we can use the music to help with those things. Some cognitive goal areas. So attention and memory. Now, there's a lot of ways to modify the music to grab people's attention. But if you think about, there are different types of attention. So you have, first you have to select and focus. What are you even going to pay attention to? And all of these things, first, a music therapist will assess where somebody is currently at, what their skill level is, before creating a goal. That's part of the individualized goal in the treatment. So we'll assess, like, can they even select something to focus on? Or is that there's too much stimulation and they can't tune into one thing to focus on or attend to? You also have to sustain your attention enough to complete a task. So that's another kind of attention, sustaining it across time. And then sometimes you're able to switch your attention between two tasks or alternate your attention. So I have another example, musical example of attention training. We'll actually do two different things. The first one, I'm going to play and sing a song, and you can sing along with me, but your job, if you want to participate, your job is to make a note of every time you hear the word money in the song. So if we're thinking of, we're focusing, or we're trying to select our attention on the word money, and you have to sustain your attention throughout the entire song in order to hear all of the times money is sung. So let's try it. And then when we're done, if you write in the chat how many times you heard the word money. This is Price Tag. It's an older song. Seems like everybody's got a price. I wonder how they sleep at night. When the sale comes first and the truth comes second, just stop for a minute and smile. Why is everybody so serious? Acting so mysterious. Got your shades on your eyes and your heels so high, you can't even have a good time. Everybody look to the left, everybody look to the right. Can you feel that? We'll pay him with love tonight. It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money. Just want to make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Ain't about the cha-ching, cha-ching. Ain't about the bubbling, bubbling. Want to make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. We need to take it back in time. Music made us all unite, and it wasn't low blows and videos. Am I the only one getting tired? Why is everybody so obsessed? Money can't buy us happiness. Can we all slow down and enjoy right now? Guarantee we'll be feeling all right. Everybody look to the left, everybody look to the right. Can you feel that? We'll pay him with love tonight. It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money. Just want to make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Ain't about the cha-ching, cha-ching. Ain't about the bubbling, bubbling. Want to make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. So what did you all get for? Yeah. So 13 is the correct answer because there is a sneaky one in the second verse. So you had to listen specifically for the word money and sustain your attention throughout the entire song so that you could hear every time the word money was sung. that would be a simpler application here. Another thing, if you need to kick it up a notch, is 2 words that you're listening to, 2 different words, 2 different counts, selecting both of the words, sustaining the whole time. Great job. So that was one example of an attention task. The next thing we're going to do is selective attention, is what it's going to focus on. I'm going to play some stuff on the piano, and I want you all to tap along with me, just on your legs, or clap or tap your foot or whatever. And then when you hear this, you'll stop tapping or clapping. And when you hear it again, you'll start tapping or clapping again. So it's telling you to do 2 different things, and you'll have to listen and select when you hear just some growly sounds in the low part of the piano, and then that'll tell you what to do. That'll be your cue to either stop or to start playing again. So make sure you don't lose track of where you're at. Let's see. So you can start tapping with me already. Tapping with me. So how is that? I'm not sure if the sound came through virtually, but yeah, so selecting that low sound and to change what you're doing, and also sustaining your attention so you can listen for those cues. Another example of attention training with music. Kicking that one up a couple notches is perhaps it would be different if we were in person. We would incorporate instruments. So when I'm playing a certain part of the music, you would be playing perhaps a pitched instrument. And then when you hear my musical cue, maybe it changes to up here, you'll play a non-pitched instrument like a drum. So you'll move from bells or a xylophone to the drum based on what you hear from me. And on top of that, maybe I also have a tambourine at my feet. And so occasionally I'll try to distract you with the tambourine tapping with my foot. So you'll have to know, I don't listen to that cue. The only cue that I need to listen to is this one. Just a way to work on that attention training. Okay, and then musical mnemonics training. This is a really fun one because just naturally, how many different songs do you know most of the words to? I have a lot. I have a lot of songs that I know most of the words to, but if I were to just speak the words, I might not be able to remember them as well. Another example is you could make a list. You can make a list and put it to a rhythm like you chant or a melody that you sing. And that will, because you're engaging more things in your brain, more parts, that helps with that remembering those things. Another example is how many of you know Jenny's phone number from the song? Jenny, I've got your number. I want to make you mine. I think might be the words. The number is 8675309. I will always remember Jenny's phone number. I don't need her number, but I'll always remember Jenny's phone number because it's in that song. So musical mnemonics training is just putting music to a list. This is a functional way to remember something. You're going to the store. I have to do it all the time if I don't write it down. Putting it to a little tune so I remember all the things, or a chant, so I remember all the things I need to pick up at the store. Okay. That is the last of the musical examples I have and the last of the information I was going to share with you all. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and I will try to answer them. I hope that you all had a lot of takeaways from this.
I know, yeah, I know
Yeah.
I did. I think that was really great.
Awesome.
Loved the musical examples and things like that. We did have and like she mentioned, go ahead and put your answers in the chat and the QA. We'll get to you. One question that was on a little bit earlier was specifically related to credentials and training for music therapists. And so they say, you know, I see on the AMTA website that there are several schools offering credentialing. Which ones are doing the most cutting edge research? Do you see, you know, specific groups coming out with research, or what's a research project that you've recently seen that you're excited about?
Yeah. Well, I think what's most exciting to me right now is the information, at least in Music Speaks. We have all of our music therapists track and collect data, information, documentation on all of their clients. So it's really fun for me to be able to look at all of that information and look at all of the trends with how they're using music and how it's affecting all of the clients and their progress towards their goals. So that's where my headspace is at a lot, most of the time these days. But I know as far as when I was looking into schools, you'll be able to see specific professors at schools that are really passionate about research. And I had to do an interview to get into UMKC, into their program. And I sat down with our music therapy professors there, and they just told me about their program. And they were like, yeah, this is the research that we do, and this is the populations we do our research with. So it really depends on the school, but there are a lot of really big ideas out there. And at this point, for me, it's just, I wish that we had all the information that we could have about music and the brain. And there are a lot of things that we still need to learn. So however we can fill in those gaps is what we need to do as a field, and universities and company-wide individual practitioners. Yeah, so that's a great question.
Yeah, I think I definitely get excited when I hear about that you guys are collecting research. Just going back to one of the comments, which you did touch on, but the fact that, you know, some of these therapies, you know, similarly with like art therapy or cognitive therapy, you know, music therapy, they are not necessarily covered by insurance or recognized by that. Do you think that research is going to play a vital role in getting insurers to kind of see the process and see the impact?
I think absolutely. And I mean, even there have been some professionals I've talked to outside of music therapy. Music therapy always has a task force in every state where we talk to people and we say, this needs to be a service you recognize on a state level. And I think we can, once we get past that point, there are several states where they recognize music therapy. We just have a lot of hurdles. So people in other professions who advocate for music therapy and, talk about the significance that it can have, I think will kind of help light a fire to get all of the states to recognize music therapy too. And then from there, we can hopefully. And there are some music therapy is hard to be reimbursed for with insurance companies, but there are several CPT codes that music therapists can bill. They just have to get approved, which is the hardest part that we are facing. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that like, so someone, okay, I'm going to, a lot of times with insurance, they just need to see that it's like medically necessary, right? So is it something that you can like go to your doctor and be like, hey, I'm having trouble with speech. I'm interested in music therapy. Like, is that like the avenue that you would go to be able to try and like get a note that music therapy is helpful? Or are there any tips that you can like that you've
Yeah.
seen those other states kind of like navigate around? Um,
Yeah. So the way that Music Speaks gets referrals for services is just by the staff at different organizations that we work with. So we have a referral form, and we have staff members fill it out, and they'll say, you know, so-and-so is a candidate for music therapy. These are the needs that we see that they have, which is why we're referring them to you. And from there, we look at each of those individuals that have been referred and assess, yes, music therapy will be a great avenue for them, or you know what, music therapy isn't what they need at this time. And oftentimes our Music Speaks philosophy is that those individuals with the highest needs are going to be the individuals we see first, because maybe other services aren't reaching the needs the way that music would be able to. But if there are individuals who say are making progress in speech therapy, then maybe those individuals would be triaged lower to receive music therapy because they are already making progress towards their goals. Does that make some sense there?
It does, yeah. You're just trying to make sure that because of the impact that music can have on speech, on all the other functions, it makes sense that, you know, that you can build off of that versus, you know, if they already have those skills, it's more of an addition. I did want to say in the chat, I'm putting a link, and because we have an online day program, and on Mondays at 1 o'clock we do have a music therapy session. So for those of you that maybe are getting those gaps or getting those kind of barriers to accessing service, you know, feel free to check that out. I encourage you guys to connect with Michelle and ask if you want, you know, those specific kind of questions or about music therapy, about Music Speaks. I'm definitely game to help in any advocacy capacity when it comes to brain injury, you know, and getting music therapy kind of on the bar for all of the insurance needs, because I think it's just so wonderful. And it crosses across so many levels. I think that's my the greatest thing that I find about music therapy. Do you have a example or story or some maybe a client experience that kind of reinvigorated your love for music therapy that you can share with no identifying information?
Sure. So the bulk of my clinical experience, to answer your question, Shelley, yes, it can be used in geriatric care as well. Pretty much any population where you can see a need, music therapy can be used and there. But one of my most cherished music therapy memories from my years of practice was working with a young child, and he didn't really communicate. He had a lot of words and he didn't really communicate well. But he would sing all the time. And so it was really fascinating because we would go back and forth singing a conversation. But if we were just talking to one another, it would look totally different. And it wasn't anything like that's one of the moments where I'm like, we need to know why this is happening. We need more information about it. But it was something where I was like, wow, music is so powerful to him. He's letting me into his space through this mode and building off of that. And I mean, my clinical brain transferring that outside of a music therapy session is, yes, he can take turns having a conversation. He does that in music, and the transfer is with those social interactions with other people. So that's, and he was such a sweet person. But one of my most favorite music moments with him.
Yeah.
But so individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, yes, absolutely. That's another population that can benefit from music therapy. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to put in Music Speaks, our website, in the chat, and there's more information there for people interested. And then there's also a form to fill out if you want to talk to anybody on our team about music therapy further. You can fill out the form, and we'll be in touch with you. And yeah, that website's in there. Thanks, Lauren.
Excellent. Yeah, sorry, you'd send it to just hosts and panelists, so I wanted to make sure that it went through. So that's what just happened for everybody else. That's why I sent that out. But yeah, so I think that is it. That's all the questions that I see. I don't see it in the Q&A, so mainly the chat there. And so I really thank you guys so much for your participation. Thank you, Michelle. That was really wonderful. I love the music components of it. Just it made me relax, just sort of like listening to it, even though I was learning. I think that just shows you like the little glimpse of you're doing rehabilitation, which is hard stuff, but you're doing it to music. So that's like fun. We have to think about rehabilitation in kind of different ways and expand our knowledge of, what it looks like. It doesn't always have to be in, really like clinical settings where you're just like, doing something over and over again. You can do it to music and dancing and walking and, so I just love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Everyone else, please fill out the survey, sign up for some of our next webinars. Our next webinar is going to be in April, and it's focusing on pediatrics and brain injury, looking at educational interventions and accommodations. So I look forward to seeing you all there, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.